Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back and what a game. It's not often that you feel this way after a loss, but a 4-5 loss to Manchester City at the Cottage on a Tuesday night. Could you ask for much more? It was a literal game of two halves. First half, Fulham in a bit of disarray, a slight chance and a window opened just before half-time with a goal from Smith Rowe. Then the game got thrown wide open at that point, going 5-1 down, nothing to lose. Fulham came back and almost snatched what would be a historic draw and point against Man City, instead unfortunately going down by one goal. But what a performance nonetheless. Here to talk it all through and to also preview the Palace game coming up on the weekend, we are joined by Dad. Elton, how are we today?
I'm pretty well, actually, considering the context of the last 48 hours. As you know, I spent the weekend on a lovely island with you and a few other people, and literally almost died of sunstroke. And I've taken about 2 days to recover from it, and woke up. I'd forgotten about the game completely, actually. And I woke up to about 76 messages on the internal That's So Craven chat and thought, oh, what is that? And then watched it this morning over breakfast and thoroughly entertained and very happy to be here to talk about it. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, I agree. The sunstroke is real. My shoulders were a very, well, I'd say my back resembled the red of the Fulham stripes from last year's away kit. It was a pretty burnt weekend for me, but nonetheless enjoyable. And you're right. I mean, yeah, when you wake up, these overnight games especially, you wake up in the morning, you think, what on earth has happened? I actually managed to catch the second half, much like Sam did, who is our other guest. Sammy, how are we going today?
Was good. Well, it's sunny today, but yesterday it was about 14. I'm going well. I was not at an island. I also watched the game in the morning. I currently need to water some of my plants, so I'll get to that. Some are thriving, but some need a little attention. It's nice to just do this at a respectable time for me. And yeah, there's lots to talk about. There's lots to vibe on. So yeah, let's take it away, shall we? Let's get into it. Let's get into the meat and veg.
Yep, agree. And look, this was a game, like you said, it's getting to that period now. We're in December. The games come thick and fast. It was never a game we likely had. We would have hoped for something out of it, but let's be honest, you come up against Man City, and especially with our record against Man City, I believe that's now 12 losses in a row. It's one of the longest losing streaks between two sides in the Premier League, at least active losing streaks. We don't get results against Man City, let's be perfectly honest. And, you know, the rhetoric around Haaland, chasing down his 100th goal, we always knew that was going to happen against Fulham. Man City potentially under pressure. Are they not doing quite as well as they used to be doing? Of course they're going to get a result against Fulham. This was never going to be a game where we were hoping that was ever going to turn into anything but a Man City win. Let's be perfectly honest. Off the back of a Spurs victory last week, maybe there were some fleeting thoughts around potential, good results in this one, but let's start with the starting lineup for this one. And Dad, we've talked a little bit this morning about this game and about the way Silva went about picking this team. Why don't you give me your thoughts on the lineup for this game and the changes that Silva made going into this one?
Do you actually think Silva goes through a thought process when he picks a team?
Absolutely. I have no idea what that thought process is, because we sit here in every single podcast and talk about all the different things Silva could do, and then he does none of them.
Well, yeah. I think it's reptilian. The first phrase that comes to mind. I think it's entirely a retreat from all magical and fearful thinking, and and just kind of revert to what you know, and that's becoming very challenging now. With injury, long-term injury problems. So he's got absolutely no choice at left back. thank God Sess is doing such a masterful job. He's got no real choice other than to work Raul into the ground in the striker position. He's got plenty of options on the wings and a good handy couple of options in the number 10. He's got options in the middle of the park, which he's been very reluctant to use. And again, he reverted to what we all were baying for change in. So yeah, look, the only thing that was probably consistent and predictable and satisfying was our back four and our keeper. Right, I don't think there's any complaints about those guys being in the starting lineup week in, week out. Yes, we love Cuenca. Yes, Diop gets a strong mention from time to time, but we know that's our best starting four, and we prefer it over a five every single time. I love that he tried and reverted to the double pivot, the cautious, tried and tested, but not so fancy and not so interesting and not so effective double pivot against Man City. And I feel sorry for Sasha Lukic. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but he had a stinker. And I don't think it really reflects terribly on him, and no one's going to hate him for it. But he had a difficult first half, and he was wrenched to the showers pretty unceremoniously at halftime. But I feel, circling back to your original question, Jack, I feel that the only way you get any progressive thinking and change from Silva is to bookend, for the universe to bookend him in a corner and for his hand to be forced. It's got to be injury. It's got to be crisis and catastrophe where he somehow feels off the hook for making a decision that well, what else have we got to lose? And I can't be held responsible. I've got to try something.
Yeah, it's always like reluctance as opposed to just like divine creativity. It's never just kind of like a master chess move, as more of a just kind of like throw the kitchen sink, or I've got absolutely no other like way around this than to just do something that I would otherwise not want to do. Speaking for like Silva. This is actually like it's kind of like an innocuous question, Jack, but it's actually probably the most loaded question of the pod.
Yeah, like, it's completely loaded.
It's actually like the worst one to start off with, because like I've got so many thoughts on this, and it's
Sam called me on his way home from work or wherever, 3 hours ahead of me, and we ended up talking for an hour, and we actually had a podcast. And we said we got to bring all this stuff because there's such good content. Yeah. And
we were also talking about software and just general wordplay as well, but the football stuff needed to be brought.
But look, there's so many things to sort of think about this game, and I feel like I'm hoping that this is a moment of exorcism and a sort of release of the pus and everything, all this build up around, stubbornness and reluctance to have a go. Because actually, when the chips were down at halftime and it all looked absolutely fucked and fraught, he reverted to what everyone's been baying for. And I'm not saying that entirely changed the scoreline by the end, but I think there was a freedom in the way we lined up, not from the start, but in the second half, which was really seismically different. And it's very hard to analyze the difference that these things make, but I think at this level, the difference is huge.
It's kind of crazy as well, because managers have to stick to their guns. They have to be assertive. They have to understand. But how much does he need to be kind of beaten into corner to kind of really kind of assert the fact that Iwobi is better in central midfield? Just in this scenario, he's not better there in any other team, but for this team right now, he's better there. And there's just infinitely better options.
I'm not so sure about that.
Well, maybe not, but is better than Sasa Lukic, in my opinion, from like a starting kind of position. And like there's just so much more opportunity there than the conservative option, because the conservative option doesn't really service us, in my opinion, and from everything that I've seen. And the second that we actually try other things, there's not a crazy amount of depth, but there is enough creativity there to actually come up with results. And we keep on seeing that. So like how many times does this have to happen before a change occurs?
I think that it's the knock-on effect as well of that conservative approach in the middle that actually does not bring out the best in other players. Berger being the case in point. He's not a massively creative player, but there is something in there.
He can be. I've seen it now.
He can do it. Yeah. And so, and it's happened a couple of times when he's been partnered with Iwobi in the middle, and it's really produced some results, which immediately vaporizes when he's got a conservative partner next to him.
Jack, your thoughts?
Well, I'd completely agree. I think, as Dad and I talked about this morning, it's just frustrating that we don't take chances when it feels like it's worth taking a chance. And a game like this, I hate the term free hit, but it is kind of a free hit. It's Man City. We don't beat Man City. They've had it over us, tactically at least, for Silva's entire time in charge. We've given them some good games, but we never seem to get a result. So why not just try something a bit different and try something? It's not even something different. It's something that's worked, which is putting Iwobi in the 8, having him sit next to Berger or Lukic, and then I think the choice to play Smith Rowe came off completely. That was a really good decision, but it's I guess a little bit disappointing and frustrating when you see the impact that Chukwueze had when he came on in the game. I would have loved to have had him throughout the entire game, because there were some opportunities where I think in the first half we could have really done with a player like Chukwueze. Not saying that he would have changed the game and it would have been different if we had him from the start, but it just feels like Silva, he's just not brave enough sometimes in those instances, and I would love him to just take a risk sometimes and just throw caution to the wind and say, yep, we're going to give it a crack against Man City and not back down, because I feel like that's what teams like Brighton and Bournemouth and the teams around us who we should be challenging and doing better than, they do that. You don't see teams constantly reverting to a defensive model against the big sides. They just back their players. They back picking the best 11 for every single game and not changing it up too much. I think the teams that change it up a lot are the teams at the very top of the league who have the depth and the ability to do that. We don't have that ability. We should just stick with our best 11 week after week. And I think it's slowly being proved that Iwobi central is in our best 11. I agree with you, Dad. The back 5 picks itself, but from there's a lot of conjecture and conversations to be had around what the best sort of forward 6 after that is. But I think Silva is just not willing to take a risk and actually pick that team, because it's almost like he's a little bit spoiled for choice.
I'm not sure if he's spoiled for choice. I would probably call that more just conservative. Just by nature. I think the thing with the best, if you kind of want to call it that, is it's not designed to be just a consistent kind of thing. It's designed to ebb and flow and change and be predicated by circumstances and form and all that kind of stuff. But me and Dad were going into a lot of depth on this before, but and frankly, we were being borderline. Well, I was being borderline a little bit racist towards Portuguese people and just saying.
Oh, I'm so glad! I'm so glad you're bringing this bit up. It was
yeah. I used to live with a Portuguese guy, and he fucking did my head in because he was so stubborn and so just annoyingly just I'll talk shit about him. I do not care. And
I love the fact that Sam is racistly generalized from the one Portuguese person he's ever met at their conservative, lack imagination, and they're stubborn. And I reminded him that Vasco da Gama explored and discovered half the world. There can't be a generalization in there.
I'm
Anyway,
sorry.
Sil-
I'm
Silver,
sorry.
Silver is
Okay.
stubborn.
Right. Like I thought we weren't going to take this online because you were backing
We
my argument
just quietly,
before.
we're not going to take it online because I'm
We're
not getting
already
stuck in a
here.
1 hour
We're
argument
already
between
here.
you guys
This
about
is
Portuguese people.
Well, what I'm saying is, from the Portuguese people I know, between my old housemate and Marco Silva, what I can say is they tend to be
Fairly
extremely
small sample.
conservative, so stubborn, and I'm just like, at what point do you kind of accept that maybe your opinion might not necessarily be the right one, and just are receptive to new things coming in and new circumstances? I can actually appreciate though that I mean, okay, so there's a concept in audio production where when you're constantly listening to something over and over again, your ears kind of stop actually listening to it properly, and then it just starts being distorted. That's how you get bad mixes from having too much higher end, because the more you listen to something, the more your ears kind of lose quality, and you just can't actually see what you're doing. So I can appreciate that maybe he's just been doing the job for as long as he has, and because he's not the most creative guy and not necessarily receptive to change, he's just kind of doing what he knows or what he used to know was working. But the system isn't working, and he's not receptive enough to change, in my opinion, and that annoys me.
I think I don't want to really start a Marco bashing thing here, but I think
No,
it's,
me either.
Not at all. I think
Portuguese bashing, though.
He copped a lot a few weeks ago, and we had a whole podcast on that very debate, because obviously our results were going very badly. That form now has changed, and I think not that we always have to look on the bright side and find the positives and think that's very boring. I think we need to be realistic about why those changes have happened, and I think some of the reasons why we've prospered is that he's actually found himself in a corner and made some changes that we've all been sort of hoping and wishing for, and they've come off. And we have turned a bit of a corner. And if you wanted to level blame, who takes the blame for being 5 down at half time or whatever we were? But it's not as simple as that. Man City, pretty mercurial team, and they could do that to anyone. But I think Jack used a word before, which, despite not wanting to bag out Silva, I think we just can't get away from, because it's beginning to define his ceiling. I think he's a great manager, done incredible things for us, and it's just a bit frustrating that. To me, there's a fear of failure, which is another word of saying is a kind of a bit of a lack of bravery, because perhaps there's just too much riding on it, and maybe that's what it means to be a Premier League manager in a mid-term club that doesn't have endless resources, and it's all wrapped up in the frustration. Yes, the Cardinals spend a lot of money, but it doesn't always result in all the players Marco wants, and it's a complex situation that if he was completely unfettered with all the resources in the world, complete job security, his team, 8 points ahead of everyone halfway through the season, read Man City, I'm sure you might find him relaxed and a bit more creative and a bit braver. But that's not the chemistry set at Fulham Football Club. And so it's a really difficult situation that he's not solely responsible for, as I've always said. And I just sort of hope that the players and their reaction in the second half give him some confidence that they're not going to let him down. He's come out and said some pretty damning things about Kusiasari, and to my eyes last night, he did not embarrass himself or his manager. Not at all. And so, I hope he takes some confidence out of some of the decisions he took last night, and that actually this squad is capable of actually delivering whatever I asked them to.
Lineup.
Sorry, I lost you for a second there, but let's jump into the game itself. And I guess look at the first goal. It was, we thought it had come probably a little bit sooner when Haaland hit the post early on, threw on goal. You'd expect him to put that one away, I was going to say 9 times out of 10, but realistically it's 99 times out of 100. He does open the scoring, though, after 17 minutes. A little bit disappointing to concede that goal, I'm going to say. A player like Haaland, we know how good he is, and to be left completely alone on the penalty spot with 4 Fulham players basically creating a box around him felt a little bit slack. A decent finish, admittedly. Should Leno do a little better there? It does kind of get hit straight at him. I know he thumps it.
No. He picked it up so sweetly, Jack, from fairly close range. Literally a half volley, which he swept. I mean, it went through Leno's arms, if you want to analyse it. So quicker reaction says he should have stopped that. But he's hit it hard from pretty close range. Look, if he magically predicted, like one does for a penalty, magically predicted and went the right way and had his hands in the right position, he'd have a chance of stopping that. But I think it could have gone anywhere. He was somewhat near, just to the right of the centre of the goal, I think. So there's plenty of space for Haaland to go either way, really. And he's good enough. He's good enough to put it where he wants to from that spot. So I think you referred to the 4 players boxing around Haaland and not putting him under pressure. I think that's where any analysis should lie, not with Leno.
No, I think that's fair, Sam.
Well, I actually thought just defending for the first half just wasn't particularly great. I mean, okay, Man City's an amazing team, and I think you can concede goals from Man City even if you are defending very, very well. But even with that being said, I did kind of feel like it was a little bit lacking. And I don't really think that's more like complacency. I just think they were a little bit overwhelmed. And there was quite a few scenarios where Anderson was really, really targeting Haaland. But Man City's kind of like a team where you can't put too much emphasis on one player because there's so much talent spread across. I don't want to say that defense let us down a little bit, but I think they were a little bit outclassed by City.
Well, speaking of slightly poor defending, and I think it was poor defending for the second goal where the ball gets played into Haaland's feet. He gets challenged by 3 players, and I know he's strong, but again, it shouldn't be that easy for him to get the ball with his back to goal, be able to turn with 3 players on him, and then play the ball to Reinders, who had a gap to run into, and a comfortable finish for a decent player. It is what he does, but again,
he's so strong, Jackie.
One-on-one, I totally understand that, but he's come between a centre back and the 2 central midfielders in Berger and Lukic, who aren't able to lay the tackle on him or get some sort of foot into the ball. And you say that, but in the second half, we were not letting that happen. We were closing that down much better and stopping those things from happening. And so I'm saying it's maybe a little naive to think that we don't need to maybe press him as hard, and it just shows the difference in effort is maybe a bit harsh, but
focus.
Just putting in that focus maybe a little bit better, and just putting in that little bit of extra, going to 110% rather than 100%.
Well, look. All I'm saying is that in defence of the ordinary man here, and that's how I rate Premier League professional footballers versus Haaland, the very, very best have a way of making great professionals look a bit silly. I mean, guys like Messi do the same thing. And it makes you look like you're not actually on your game. You should have actually marked him closer. You should have, all these things. And somehow they have a way of dropping their hip or just shimmying around and losing you. And like Haaland is a massive guy, and that's all happening so quickly. And he turns on the spot and finds a way to, almost like there was a little channel there that was unbelievable. That he sort of like there was this channel that just opened for him to lay that ball beautifully off, and it looked so easy, but that's what they do.
I don't know. I kind of agree a little bit more with Jack. I'm kind of in the camp of work smarter, not harder, because yes, he's elite and arguably one of, if not probably the best striker the Premier League's ever had. He's in the conversation now, but I mean, we've nullified him before, and we've nullified City before. So I completely understand the argument, but I do think we should have done better.
Yeah, no, well, that's basically all I was saying there.
Yeah.
And then a time that we definitely should have done better, and I'm going to put this down to Leno here. Corner gets swung in. Leno with what can only be described as quite a weak punch. And I think overall, in terms of our clearances, they weren't great in the first half, especially a lot of clearances that just didn't make it, even to the halfway line, or attempting to pick out killer passes with clearances rather than just putting your foot through the ball and actually doing what a clearance is, which is clearing the ball. Leno's punch falls to Foden. Foden, he's in such good form at the moment. If you give him an opportunity like that, he's always going to put it away. Puts it in the far corner. It's a very good finish, but again, well, Dad, I'll throw it to you. Should we be doing better there?
It sounds silly to say, but at such an early stage in the game, it was actually starting to get a bit stretched. They were kind of all over us, and so many of their players were finding space in the final third, if not the final. No, yeah, the final third. I just think it becomes just a massive problem to defend when a team is marauding like that. And yeah, look, he's a good player, Foden. Give him half a chance, and he'll make you look stupid again. But yeah, look, goalkeeper. If he punches or parries, he's got to throw it wide or absolutely put his 5 knuckles through it. And it's, got to clear the box, basically. The 18-yard box, ideally. But yeah, I don't know. I'm reluctant to be too harsh on the way that we conceded some of these goals. Honestly, I just think it's probably asking a bit too much.
I don't want to say.
Hey, look, it's a birthday week, I'm celebrating 2 birthdays this week. I'm in a good mood.
Yeah, I don't really want to I don't really kind of want to focus so deeply on our shortcomings. The only thing I'll probably say is just I would say probably the first 70 minutes just weren't that fun. Then it got very fun, but the first 70 minutes just was not a fun watch.
Well, I know you say you don't want to focus on our shortcomings. My issue here is we put 4 goals past Man City and still lost. And
yeah,
if we didn't leave Haaland alone in the box on the 17th minute, if Leno puts in a slightly better punch from the corner there and actually clears the ball, if 3 players manage to challenge Haaland and win that ball, we potentially win this game against Man City. And their defence is frail at the moment. We didn't take advantage of that because our defence, unfortunately, was a little frailer. And I'll say that just for the first 3 goals, because the last goals, I'm going to say, are very unlucky. And before we do that, obviously, before halftime, 3-0 down, I thought this was looking, like a very bad day out. Fortunately, we pull one back. A really good ball in from Harry Wilson, who finds Smith Rowe, who we've sort of half mentioned it. I thought this was Smith Rowe's best game in a Fulham shirt so far, at least, or definitely up there. It's a really good finish. He worked hard throughout the entire game. He looked actually really classy on the ball, I thought, for the majority of the game. Made good decisions throughout. I thought it was a really good showing from Smith Rowe in a game where I would have preferred to see Josh King at the very start of the night. By the end of it, I actually was very pleased with Smith Rowe starting. I would have liked Josh King a little bit earlier into the fray, but I still agree that Smith Rowe had a really good game, and I'm glad he picked up a goal. And I think that definitely made a big difference to their halftime team talk as well. Silva's going in. We've conceded 3 goals, but fortunately we pulled one back, so we're not completely out of the game. We know we can score goals. We know we can come back. But how do we feel at halftime? I mean, I assume. Well, I know me and Sammy picked it up in the second half, and Dad, you sort of. I assume you knew the result before you watched the game, but did it feel, or should it have felt fairly helpless at that point? 3-1 down to a Man City side who looked fairly rampant. How are we feeling?
I was feeling pretty dejected. Because it's funny, like, yeah, like as you said, like it's coming from like the second half, there was like a lot of elation, but then when I watched it back, I was just like, this is not fun. Like it was almost like it was a very Shawshank Redemption kind of esque story. It's like really only like the last 20 minutes is like where like the euphoria kicks in, and the rest of the movie is just Andy Dufresne getting just beaten down by the system, and that's what it just really, really felt like. I mean, if I did not know that it was going to end the way it was, I probably would have switched it off, to be perfectly honest.
Oh dear.
Well. And Michael from the pod made a very good comment. For all of those that left it at 5-1 down, please leave your season ticket at the door and don't come back.
Yeah.
And I fully support that. Look, very unusual for me. I actually did know the score before I started watching the replay. It was very, very unusual for me. I'm normally pretty staunch about that. And so I was sort of fascinated, as to what the arc of this whole game actually was. And I enjoyed watching that all unfold. Can I just come back to your original point, Jack? And I want to put my hand up and say that I've possibly been ESR's biggest public critic.
Definitely been.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a funny bit of detail.
No. Own it. Yeah. Just own it.
Oh, no.
Just own it.
I totally own it. And I think it's been very justified because it hasn't been bitchy. It hasn't been tempestuous. It's been factual because he's actually been really poor. Okay. And he's looked lazy, and he's looked a whole bunch of things, and he has not looked his worth and value. And I have a big problem with that. When good money is pretty scarce in a transfer season and we get that kind of return on investment, I was not a happy puppy. But it, to me, as Jack said, easily his best game in a Fulham shirt for me. And what does Skippy said? But he was shit. The only defense on his. Yeah, he was definitely shit. No, I thought he looked a different player. Actually, he looked up for it. There was some spark about him. He looked purposeful, and as you said, Jack, he looked really good on the ball. He looked very competent. He looked like he was confident, and didn't look intimidated. You know, when we in the early days, ESR, you saw some magic against really poor sides. And then when you came up against better opposition, when things got a bit tougher, it just fade out and just be absolutely MIA. But so to see him do that against Man City is actually really, really pleasing. And one hopes he gets a massive shot of confidence from that, because we really, really do need him. And isn't it funny that if you actually looked at that lineup from the start and saw ESR rather than Josh King, he would be one of the glaring annoyances that you'd say, why aren't we playing Josh King here? And he actually did a really good job. So good for him.
Yep, no, 100% agree. And look, 3-1 down at halftime. I picked up the game just after halftime. I thought I'll quickly scrub back through the first half, see what I missed out on. You know, saw that we were 2-0 down after 43 minutes or something. So I quickly went to the second half, started the second half, thought, I'm only 5 minutes behind, I'll scrub through and catch up. Saw that it was 3-1, went, shit,
such
okay.
Jack
Well,
vibes.
no, because I wanted to watch the game live. So I thought, we'll be able to like quickly scrub and get back to live so I can watch it live for at least the last 40 minutes or so. Saw that it was 3-1, so I had to go back to the end of the first half to pick up those goals. By the time I'd watched those, I got back to almost live, and all of a sudden we were down 5-1.
What did
Second
you learn?
half, Foden. Well, what did I learn was that this game was fucking nuts. And look, the two goals for Man City in the second half, I thought for the first three goals we could have done better. for the next two goals, so their fourth and fifth, I thought we were really unlucky. I thought Foden's second goal, the ball is going out of play. I think Doku's the one who puts the ball in. It hits Haaland on the heel. He is not meant to pass that to Foden. Doesn't matter what he says. That's clipped him on the heel. It's ended up taking a lot of pace off the ball and changing the trajectory. I think if it hadn't hit his heel, it's probably going maybe a couple of yards wide of the far post, and Leno just watches that one out for a goal kick. Instead, it falls perfectly into Foden's path. Again, Leno, maybe there's an argument that he could have come out a little quicker there and actually closed down the angle better and potentially got to the ball and made a save. Still, I think unlucky. Falls to Foden, he puts it away. It's an easy finish with 4-1 down. We've seen heads drop often, and I think, again, we were unfortunate. 6 minutes later, Doku again puts in a shot, takes a wicked deflection off Berger. The ball was going wide, which is why it's been awarded to Berger as an own goal there. And we go 5-1 down after 54 minutes.
And did you see the cheeky little prick owned it? He kept on telling all his teammates, yeah, I scored that.
Yeah, of course, because he's a bit of a dick, I think. And but look, it felt like at that point, Man City could have put 10 past us, to be honest. It felt like one of those games, and you see it a lot often where things just are not going your way no matter what happens, and everything is falling City's way. And, a fair point here from David Wellington on our live stream. City got lucky twice, but Haaland scores 3 on his normal day, balances out in my book. A fair point, to be fair, because Haaland did hit the post twice. The header from about 6 yards out, he definitely should have buried. Somehow manages to miss that. And, the attempt to open the scoring and where he hits the post, I think, again, he usually puts those away. So fair call. But it did feel like, you do hope for the rub of the green. We just did not get it in this game, unfortunately. 5-1 down. Like Sam said, and like we heard from the chat, there were a lot of people leaving at that point, and I'm not one of those people who would ever leave a game early, but I can sometimes understand when it does feel like it's just not going our way whatsoever. But, in a way, shame on those people. Well, fool on them.
Kind of sucked in, really.
Sucked in, yeah. I mean, they've missed out on an absolute ripper second half there. And it did all start to come together. The ball falls to Iwobi on the edge of the box. He finishes really beautifully, and he's very good at those finishes. We've seen those a few times from him, taking the shot first time, keeps it low, bit of curl on it. Donnarumma can't really do anything about that. And then it was the Chukwueze show after that. And I think for the rest of the game, it was a Chukwueze show. I guess winding back slightly, and I know, sorry, I've skipped forward a little bit, but Sasa Lukic, I think it's worth talking about. There were halftime substitutions. Lukic and Kenny Tete go off. We see Castagna and Chukwueze come on. Thoughts on, firstly on Kenny Tete. Do you think that was a fair decision to take him off? Or we know Castagna's maybe a little bit more attacking. And secondly, maybe some comments on Lukic's performance, because Lukic, who has been a very good player for us over the last couple of years, he dropped a stinker, let's be perfectly honest.
I mean,
Go on, Sam. Go.
Well, I mean, my whole thing with Sasa Lukic is I think at his best, I'm probably rating him maybe a 7 out of 10. Maybe that's mean, but frankly, I don't care. His glass ceiling is a lot lower than the other people that I know, and I don't think I've ever seen a truly remarkable Sasa Lukic performance. The main goals that I can think of Sasa Lukic scoring, he scored off of his thigh. He's not.
No, he's not a goal scorer though. We don't pick him for his goal scoring ability.
Yeah, but I also don't really see him as a truly a great playmaker, an overly proficient technician. I think he's fine. I'm not saying he's crap. I mean, he's 10 times more talented than I'll ever be in my entire life. I want that on the record to be known. I'm sure he's a terrific athlete, and maybe in a completely different system, a completely different team, he would shine in a way that I could never have seen before. But this Sasa Lukic right now, the best case scenario, I'm saying he's about a 7 out of 10. And on his worst day, it's bad. it is not. It is not good. It's like get this, like saying this with like love. It's just like right. We need to take you away just to kind of like save any kind of aura and any kind of like reputation that you have because like as see it this way like a Josh King stinker isn't even the same league as like a Josh King as a Sasa Lukic stinker. That was bad. That was not a good showing.
I kind of view Sasa Lukic as a sort of a bit of a humanoid. He sort of does a robotic job in the middle. There's not a lot of flair.
Very
On
NPC.
his good day, on his good day, he does a lot of cleaning up. He's quite good in the physical tackle, a bit predictable, which I think the refs kind of get onto pretty quickly. And he doesn't really conceal very much. There's not a lot of craft about it all. It's all pretty blatant. But he's a good pro. But I'm with you. He's a 7 on a great day, and I'm very grateful for his 7 when it comes off. But we saw that with João Palhinha. He's a bit of a funny one, isn't he? He's a bit of a enigmatic player for this Fulham era, in that he's kind of hard to pair with, isn't he? I don't know that we've ever found someone that can either release him and turn him into something we've yet to see in Sasa Lukic. And
mind him and Reed
on the no, but that's not a winning combo.
I know,
but
yeah.
I think the bigger problem is on the flip side of that, he doesn't seem to instill the confidence in players that actually do have it, but need a good partner in order to flourish. I mean, João Palhinha was a different sort of animal, and an animal he was. But, Berger, I think Berger's quite a good case in point because he's not the most flamboyant player. And yet there is a little twinkle in his eye that he does love a through ball. And you almost see him when he gets to the edge of the opposition 18-yard box. He kind of has a little bit of a retentive withdrawal between his butt cheeks, and he passes the ball sideways. And even though he can unleash one, but it just doesn't play with confidence. And I think I do, in part, kind of connect that with who he's paired with. So for me, Sasa Lukic, he's a real funny one, and I just don't know that we've ever found a really great pairing for him and with him.
Well, I mean, let me try and find the question. I will find the question here. I can't put it up on the screen, but I'll read it out. If it's a choice, well, let's. This is making an assumption that Iwobi is best in the 8. And in making that assumption, we basically have to say who sits alongside him. Is it Lukic or Berger? This question here is from... I'll name their name in the Discord just because I'm sure they'll get a good kick out of it. Sydney Sweeney's Boy Toy. If it's Lukic or Berger, who do we choose? The comment here is 100% fit Lukic is 100% fit Lukic is a better 6 and a better passer, which I value more than Berger's ball carrying abilities, which is what I put Berger as better than Lukic at. But I don't think it's good enough to displace Lukic. How do we feel about that? To me, I think they both have different qualities, and I think if you're looking for a 6, Lukic is possibly the better 6, and I think he would actually do quite well alongside Iwobi, but it depends what you're looking for in a game. That's where I don't mind a bit of rotation, where against Man City, I'd probably play Lukic and Iwobi together. Against other teams where you want to be a little bit more expressive, I'd probably put Berger in with Iwobi.
My problem with Berger is actually his inconsistency. I actually don't doubt his talent. I think there's a real player in there, but I think he's been really up and down, and sometimes he just absolutely is MIA. And you cannot afford for your 6 to be MIA or even your 8. And maybe I'm misremembering this, but I thought he was quiet and pretty ineffective in the first half, and I thought Berger came to life much more in the second half last night. And maybe he was carried along by the other players sort of getting together and deciding to do something miraculous last night, or maybe it was his pairing in the middle.
He seems to be
I
weirdly.
don't know. Go on.
Sorry. Well, I just find that, like, with Sander Berge, I find he's like weirdly impressionable. Like, I think he kind of like mirrors whoever he's playing with, because I feel that when he's playing with Lukic, he is that kind of like stoic kind of like presence, which is very, very Lukic coded, and maybe a bit more aggressive and a bit more emphasis on defending. And then when he's playing with like a Welby, he turns into like little twinkle toes, and he can ball. Like he's deceptively good at like I can't remember which game it was the other day, but like he was putting in some beautiful crosses and like some beautiful passes that he has. Well, in my experience with him, he has no right to be doing. I'm like, who is this Berger that I've never seen before?
And circling back, Sam. Sorry to interrupt you, but this is a really crucial point, because we're just punters. We see this, and a lot of people are seeing this. The Discord is all over the Discord. People
I am not
generally
that bright.
view, and it just astonishes me that Silva doesn't seem to enthusiastically embrace that. There's a stifling of Berger. There's definitely a stifling of Berger, and I don't think it's countered by the positive effect of having Lukic alongside him.
Free burger.
Ooh, something in
that. And then look, it's worth now just talking about Chukwueze. What a game! Comes on at halftime. Again, I'd say disappointing that he didn't start, considering his impact against Spurs. I thought he was great against Spurs, and I would have liked to see us back him. And I think, again, this comes down to Silva's decision-making here, where it would have made more sense for Iwobi to play centrally in the 8, and that would have freed up a spot for Chukwueze to start with Wilson on the other wing. Disappointing that we didn't see that happen. And look, he changed the game when he came on. He came on at halftime. He got his feet on the ball often, got a lot of touches, made a lot of passes, got in good positions, and whenever he had the ball at his feet, he looked dangerous. And he took a couple of opportunities that we see players. Well, we see players go for fairly often, but they don't seem to ever turn out to be goals. And in these instances, first-time shots where the ball sort of sits up nicely, and he's put both away perfectly. One of them, a really good strike, which he hit and was constantly curling away from Donnarumma in goal. He had no chance of getting to that first goal. And the second one through a crowd of bodies. It's kind of what you're asking for sometimes. Admittedly, if that gets blocked by someone, you kind of go, geez, that was a waste. But you take your chances, and it does come off sometimes. And this time it did come off, and it's a great goal, meaning 12 minutes plus injury time, which ended up being 8, almost 9 minutes of injury time, gave us 20 minutes of very, very hard pressing against Man City. And you could tell they were struggling to the point that they actually brought on Nathan Ake and John Stones towards the end of the game to shore up their defence in replacing attacking players. So we made an impression on Man City here, and it's 3 really good performances in a row. If we're being perfectly honest, it's disappointing to lose this game, but at the same time, when you look at the way we performed in that second half, if you say if we go out and perform like this over and over again, we'll pick up points and start flying up the table. Another point to mention, and it's a comment here from James D. Fulham FC on YouTube. We should have had a penalty, and it's worth talking about the impact that Jonah Kusiasare had as well when he came on and joined. He came on for the last, well, he was subbed on in the 73rd minute, so he ended up having almost 25 minutes out there, which is definitely the longest we've seen him. And there's a bit of a shift from Kusiasare here, and I think a few people have mentioned it on the Discord as well. As was reported, he requested to play for the under-21s. It's clear that he's wanting to prove himself, and I think that's a really mature move by an 18-year-old to say, I'm not getting a chance playing for the first team. Silva, you obviously don't like what I'm doing. Let me play for the under-21s and show you what I can actually do. He goes out and scores a goal for the under-21s. Maybe that's made a bit of an impression on Silva, who said, yep, okay, good, I like this attitude now. Gives him a bit more of a chance against Man City in a game that's kind of... He came on in the 73rd minute. I think at that point, that was just after Chukwueze had scored, so we were down 5-3. Jimenez, fair play to him. He ran hard all game. He's absolutely shattered at the moment, and it's clear that he's shattered. So it was a good opportunity to put Kusiasari out. And, I was messaging our little group WhatsApp about it, and I think I talked to Dad about it this morning as well. He put in a really good account of himself. I didn't see any poor touches from him. In fact, I saw some real class. There was a ball that got played over the top that he chested down into King. A couple of times he got his foot on the ball and looked really assured in possession. Haven't seen him take a shot yet, which I'd love to see, but he was getting himself into good positions. There was a time quite late on where he got the ball in the box and he brought the ball down perfectly to his feet and just laid the ball off. It was a couple of really promising things from an 18-year-old. Just that, there's a reason that he's highly rated, and I think you can see that just from those couple of little instances. And I really hope that gives Silva the confidence to consistently be giving him that sort of 20, maybe even 30 minutes in games going forward. And maybe if Jimenez is really struggling, he actually gets a start and Jimenez can sort of come on late in the game. And I guess I just want to know your guys' thoughts on his performance and also, I guess, slightly touching on Kevin, who came on late as well, and also I think was really exciting towards the end of the game.
Also,
no, you go.
One thing you forgot about JKA is actually he won a penalty as well, which arguably on any other day could have been given.
That's how we started the conversation, was the comment saying we should have had a penalty.
Passed over quickly. I thought, again, thank you, Universe, for actually forcing Marcus Silva's hand in a really difficult theatre of operation. And he stood up and he didn't disappoint himself, or he didn't let Silva down, and hope to God that Silva develops some confidence out of that, because I think it's just inevitable that we're going to break Raul as our only proven striker. We're going to break him if we keep forcing him to play, more than 70 minutes a game at the moment, because he's not the youngest bloke. He's had a high work rate coming into December, and I just think it's not smart to continue to rely on him so heavily. So, great that he scored a goal in the youth team. Fantastic that he made a good account of himself last night, and I'm really hopeful that he gets more of a chance. Chukwueze, geez, if we do not convert our option and sign Chukwueze, last night probably means that everyone else will be after him in the Premier League. Because doing that against Man City, he didn't look troubled by any of the defensive midfielders and defenders in the tightest of spaces. He's tricky, and he's got real top shelf class about him, and he's just he's a real fan favorite, isn't he? I think he just gets the stadium going when he starts going on his runs. So there's plenty to love about him. I wonder whether the fact that he started on the bench after Saturday's game was more about kind of conditioning and
possible
managing him in, and maybe the club decided that he wasn't in the right condition when he arrived at Fulham, and God knows Marco is going to play that conservatively and roll him in really slowly. Anyway, he he's, and I know he came on a different side to Wilson, but I actually thought Harry Wilson played really well in the first half. I realised that Harry Wilson gave way to, as part of a change that saw Sasa Lukic leaving and Waby moving to the centre, leaving a gap on the wings and so forth. But I actually thought Harry Wilson was pretty good in the first half. Thought he was exciting, and the really positive about that is that we're coming into, it's emerging that we've actually got some real options where either of a couple of these pairs of players on the wings could start, and you're likely to get a good result regardless of the opposition, which is just a dream situation to be in, really. I really liked what I saw from Kevin. Obviously, didn't know goals, but I thought he was, once again, against top-class opposition, he couldn't be contained. And multiple times, beat his man and got into really dangerous areas, and was supplying balls and no one could get on the end of them. So really promising stuff that, we all know that if we could sprinkle a fit Jedi into that mix, that would be really something else to see Jedi bombing on and providing even more options for those guys to combine with. But I had a funny feeling that this game would produce one of two vibes for Fulham. It could snuff us out in terms of the little bump and change of form that we've kind of witnessed over the last couple of weeks with Sunderland and a good result against Spurs. But, if we got really badly battered and a lackluster effort against Man City, it could have really knocked the wind out of our sails and, just placed an extra load on an already weary squad. But quite the opposite is actually, happened here. And I think this could be a bit of a turning point. I know it's a really busy period, but it's a great time to be finding form as we hit, really busy period in December, where if you win more games than you ought to, you find yourself in early January in a pretty fortuitous position. So fingers crossed.
I swear you just talked for like 3.5 minutes just then, just quietly. That was quite impressive. That was a long time. Yeah, I'm conscious of time, so I don't want to like go into it too much. One thing I'll say,
you mean, like I wasn't.
Yeah. One thing I'll say is that I salivate at the idea then when we have a confident front three of Kevin, Muniz, and Chukwueze. And I just really, really hope that Silva purchased this talent and that he actually sees the full potential and actually just kind of sees and actually understands that going forward, this is the best option. I don't think he will, but I really hope that we at least fast track that, even if it's 2 weeks quicker than it would otherwise be. I will take that.
Well, I think this is a pretty simple one. We have an option to buy him. I think you need to do that. Take up that option basically at the very start of the transfer. Well, before he goes back to his parent club, there'd be an expiry date on it. So I assume if we decide to sign Chukwueze, which seems like the most obvious thing to do because we've already agreed on the financials of it, it's now just about actually finalising it and sort of ticking that box. He'll be with the squad for the whole of pre-season. And again, even if he missed the first couple of weeks of pre-season, I wouldn't be too worried about that because he's spent a whole year with the team anyway. He knows the style. It's basically a player coming back late from international duty at that point, which is, to me, totally fine. So I feel like that performance is enough for me, for all the fans, and I'd say for Marco Silva and his team to say, yes, this player has to be signed, and it's going to feel like a new signing next season, knowing that he's permanent and he's had a season with us. I think we'll see Chukwueze hopefully return to that form that earned him that sort of hype that he had a couple of years ago that didn't really follow through when he went to Milan, and hopefully we can bring the best out of him. And being around players like Iwobi and Bassi, his Nigerian teammates, who he obviously feels very at home with, makes a big difference. And I feel like second season Chukwueze is going to be even better than first season Chukwueze. One last thing to mention before we do move on, because like you said, I am conscious of time. Unfortunately, Josh King couldn't quite nick his first Fulham goal. So close. Very unlucky. A great goal line clearance from Guardiola there. A great ball through from Kevin. A brilliant little dink from Josh King, who, what I love the most about that, he just did not give up on that ball. A lot of players late in the game would just go, oh, shit, that's gone out. He's run hard around the back of John Stones, I think it is. Got a little nick in, gets it over Donnarumma. It's dribbling into the back of the net. Guardiola gets back and makes the clearance, and unfortunately we can't pick up what would have been memorable point against Man City, but still going down fighting, can't complain about that. A quick look at the stats. Fulham dominating possession, 53% possession against Man City. I would argue and guess that that's our best return in a game against them for some time. Man City with 4 shots on target, of which they scored 5 goals. Shows how we were potentially a little unlucky. We matched them there with 6 shots on target for ourselves and 12 shots on goal to City's 11, 7 corners for Fulham to City's 2, 612 passes against Man City is a great output from the team, a really good performance in general. Looking ahead, and I'll throw to a question from the Discord from IGTP, are we going to drop a stinker at the weekend after 3 good performances? We had a dominant performance against Sunderland where we had 24 shots on goal and won. A bit of a snatch and grab against Tottenham where we managed to come away with a 2-1 victory, and a disappointing loss, but in some ways a positive loss against Man City. Playing Crystal Palace on the weekend, who I feel like we have dropped a few stinkers against in the past, and maybe a little, I wouldn't call them a bogey team as such, but a team who seem to always cause us troubles. Do we feel like this might be a slippery one for us on Sunday night?
Well, I think the great thing is that it cannot be lost on us that Palace always give us trouble. They're always a really difficult team for us, and we fail to prevail over them, over the last couple of years. So you'd think that we wouldn't ever be underestimating them, regardless of where they are or what their form is like, because they've always been difficult for us. So you'd think that off a bit of a high, we would go to that very positively, but in a guarded kind of a way, and certainly not be caught unawares.
Sammy?
I'll be really real. I checked out for a sec. What were we talking about? Sorry.
Well, your microphone also dropped out, it seems.
Sorry, I just completely glazed over.
I just hope that are
we going to get cooked by Palace? Basically, is the question.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, to be fair, I think Palace's team the past couple of years has actually been deceptively very, very good. And I actually think that even though they're a very well-run team, I think the team isn't as strong as it's been in the past couple of years. But I mean, they're still Palace, and I still think that they kind of have a little bit of an edge on us. It feels very draw. It feels very 1-1 to me. So I reckon it wouldn't. I don't think it's going to be an embarrassment. I reckon it'll probably be a frustrating. This kind of screams 0-0 to me a little bit. But I'll take that, honestly. I mean, I'd take that over another loss. It's not the end of the world. I will be annoyed if we lose to Palace, but I think we'll do okay.
You know what I'm most concerned about is that Silva says, we always have. We get beaten in the middle and bullied in the middle against Palace. I know what I'll do. I'll pick Lukic and Berger.
I mean, it's highly likely, unfortunately. I would say Palace's midfield. I mean, they just went down to Man United last weekend. I think they play tonight potentially. I'll just double check that. They play against Burnley tonight. They don't have a overly physical midfield, I'd say. I know they're still quite, Kamada and Wharton playing in the middle. Malang Sarr, Pino sort of sit behind and sort of central there. But I wouldn't say they're a midfield where you think we're going to get overrun. More so, I'd say that they're a little worrying going forward, the way they got Mitchell, Munoz, who caused us problems from wing back last time round, and Mateta, who's been in really good form this season. That's where I think the game's probably going to be won or lost. And so I'd hope that we go with Iwobi in the 8 there and just, a toss of a coin between Berger and Lukic for whoever sits in the 6. And I'd expect after that performance, Chukwueze is probably going to be starting alongside Wilson on the wings. And then, again, it's a bit of a toss-up between ESR and Josh King, who sits in the 10. Sammy?
No. That was me. Actually, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Saying that
Okay,
I want that to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how I would see it playing out. I would hope that Silva would make some changes because I don't think we'll go into the game against Palace with that same lineup. But that remains to be seen. Guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. It's been a big one. We've got a big game against Palace on the weekend. A win there takes us right back up the table at the moment. It is very tight in the league this season. I will quickly go to the slide that shows the table. Fulham currently sitting in 15th place on 17 points, but a win would take us to 10th at the very least. At the very most at the moment. And that win would actually potentially leave us only one more win away from 5th. So it is tight in the table at the moment. I don't think you can take too much away from our position. The biggest thing for me, though, is that we're 6 points ahead of the relegation zone where Leeds, Burnley and Wolves are sitting deep in there at the moment. Forest and West Ham, you'd expect them to start picking up results, but it's not really happening for them at the moment. Forest do take on Wolves. I think that's tonight as well, or in the next couple of days at least, and you'd expect them to then jump a little closer to us, but I think we've got a bit of a buffer at the moment over the teams down the bottom of the table. Guys, like I said, I think we can wrap it up. I'm looking forward to this game on the weekend against Palace, though. I'm hopeful that we can get a good result there and potentially make our move up the table. Dad, thank you for joining tonight, or this morning, or this afternoon, or wherever you're listening from.
Thank you. A really good chat, actually, and a nice topic to talk about. As you say, whilst we lost, that was actually a really, really exciting performance, and I think it's a turn of a corner. So I'm looking forward to December being very productive for us.
And Sammy, thank you for joining as well.
Thanks for having me. I've had fun. Some games are seen as a loss even when you win, and some games feel like a win even when you lose in a very Rocky-esque kind of way. Today was a positive day, and I had a fun chat with the people that I grew up with.
Beautiful. Can't complain about that at all. Yeah. Yep, agree. It's a weird one to talk about when you feel positive off the back of a loss, but it was a really enjoyable game to watch. I know from talking to the people who were there in the stadium that the team got a rightful standing ovation at the end of that game because it was a superb team performance to be able to be 5-1 down against Man City and almost nick a point at that point. That, like you said, Dad, hopefully is a turning point for this side, and they take on a lot of positives from that performance. Dad, I don't want Sam to take us out this time because it's always weird, so I'll let you give us the U-Whites to finish off the stream.
I would absolutely love to. U-Whites!